Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for coming out and joining us this morning as we embark on this journey that is mobile DevOps. I'm Jonathan Carter. Thomas Stomke is with me. And we're from the Visual Studio and HockeyApp team, as you may have suspected from the title of this talk. And really what we want to discuss this morning is this concept of mobile DevOps, what it actually means practically, why it's valuable, and how you might implement practices that are labeled as mobile DevOps into your actual projects, your business, the culture of your team, and so forth and so on. So the majority of the session is going to be demos, but we're going to incrementally progress through the value that you can gain by choosing different levels of maturity, so to speak, as you're implementing DevOps practices into your applications. So before we embark onto the specific steps of the demos this morning, let's set the stage quickly on what is it that we mean by mobile DevOps. And the reason I want to just set this foundation is that this term DevOps can be a little bit ambiguous depending on who you ask. Certainly if we break the term down literally, we probably can agree on what the mobile part means, mobile applications. So we're not talking about server applications today, even though a lot of the things we'll discuss are influenced by things that developers building server-based apps have been doing for a long time. And the DevOps part, if you break that down literally, right, is just helping align developers, the engineering team, with the team members doing the operations of an app. The people doing deployments, doing customer interaction, actually monitoring the health of an application, all those things that in some organizations are divided organizationally. And so the goal to bring them together. And really the reason why bringing the team as a whole more closely together is that it can make the development process easier. And you can get value out to your customers quicker, right? So in the mobile world we live in today, there's tons and tons of competition, and consumer demand and expectations is really higher than it's ever been. And so typically, customers or companies and developers recognize the need to be very, very agile, to respond quickly to feedback, to respond quickly to issues. And so in order to do that, a more close alignment of your organization from product management to marketing to developers to the operations team is really critical. And so that's what we're talking about today. Then finally, we'll talk about automation and some buzzwords that you may have also heard. But the reason that we're listing automation second is that automation itself is not the goal. Automation can help you achieve something that is more repeatable and sustainable, right? So if you set up a DevOps solution where you're releasing value more quickly and all the things necessary to do that, which we'll talk about, if you automate it, that then makes it easier to keep doing it, as opposed to having somebody on the team that is the DevOps champ and he goes on vacation and then all of a sudden it's easy for things to slip by the wayside. Okay. So the chart that we have on the right side of the screen, you may have seen something familiar or similar to this, and really it's just illustrating this continuum or this life cycle of app development that DevOps typically tries to help model, right? So the laptop in the middle is the developer. You're writing code. And the first step along the way is you check that code into some type of version control system. So whether that's GitHub, TFS, Visual Studio Team Services. But as you go beyond that, and that code that's now checked into some source control system, how do you get that code into users' hands and then get feedback from those users to keep, to keep the flow of new features, deployment to users, getting feedback, and then just keep cycling and repeating that process efficiently while still maintaining quality. So what we're going to do in this talk is talk about each step along that continuum, what recommendations can be made to simplify that process for your team, and then what products our team is working on to help make that easier. So let's talk about the first step along the way, which beyond just checking code into your version control, this concept of automated builds and automated testing. So you may have heard the term continuous integration before, and the term continuous means just doing it over and over again. And integration here is really talking about a few things, but you can imagine as more and more developers work on the same team, they're working on local versions of a project. As their local copy diverges from the shared version, you can have an issue called an integration problem, right? And so continuous integration is kind of this cultural desire to have the developers on the team integrating their work more regularly so that there is not a divergence of code that lasts for too long. And if we think about that goal that we talked about to frequently release value to customers, you can imagine why having developers integrating their local copies of a project more frequently is valuable, because otherwise, if you have something that you want to get to customers' hands, but it's going to take a while to integrate that because it's been weeks since it's been actually merged with the main source repo, then that's now slowing you down. And so really, CI is trying to help balance that desire to iterate quickly without losing quality. And this can be tricky, because if you only wanted to do one of these two things, it would be easy. If you wanted to iterate quickly, that's possible, right? Just start doing some cowboy coding, releasing stuff that you've never tested, but that might have some ramifications. And the same thing goes on the other side. If you want to just maintain quality, you can also kind of get quality paralysis and never actually release anything. And so finding the balance between how do we move quick, respond to customer needs, but make sure that we have a great product all the time is very important. And so typically what people do here is they set up an automated build server, right? This is the first and simplest thing you can do. Just make sure that anytime somebody writes new code, that it at least integrates well into the source repository and has no compile errors, right? The simplest things possible. Try to eliminate the "it works on my machine" syndrome as much as you can. But obviously, as we know, compile errors only represent a portion of problems that an app can have. And so beyond that, right, typically, when you want to get into the realm of continuous integration, moving quickly but still maintaining quality, this is where you still need some type of safeguards to make sure that you didn't cause regressions. And this is where automated tests become very valuable. Because think about it, if you're trying to move fast, but you have to verify every change that you make by means of manual validation, this is going to be very slow, depending on the breadth, the scope of the app, the project, the feature that you're working on. And so having automated tests that you can rely on to help give you that safeguard, to feel comfortable that what you're releasing is high quality, is going to be very key. And then finally, since we're talking about mobile, one of the challenges that is even greater than if you've been a web developer or doing server-driven applications in the past is the fragmentation of devices that you have to accommodate is massive, right? As a web developer, you had to think about, oh, well, did you test in Firefox and IE? That was a problem, but it was not as nearly as hard as mobile development needs to be. And so relying on test clouds or services that provide you a lab of pre-provisioned devices can be extremely valuable. That way you don't have to own every Samsung variant or regional specific devices that you might not even be able to get, such as in India or something like that. And so really those things are what combine to helping you maintain that quality. So let's talk about, that was kind of the theory, right? How do we constantly release as quickly as we can, but still have a high quality product? So what are some products that we're going to talk about that help make that implementation of that practice easier? So the first one we'll discuss is Visual Studio Team Services, or for short, VSTS. And if you've heard of Team Foundation Server, really this is just a cloud-hosted version of that. And so in our demos, we're going to discuss VSTS. But if you're using the TFS on-premise, and that's more appropriate for you, then everything we're showing is also relevant to that. And so TFS or VSTS is many things. We're only going to talk about a few of them in this talk, but it provides a great version control solution, right? Both Git, Team Foundation version control, unlimited private repos. So if you're looking for a solution there and you haven't evaluated VSTS, I would recommend it. It's also a great platform for just doing the planning of your projects. So it has support for backlogs and Kanban boards and anything that you would need regardless if your team is doing Scrum or whatever variant of Agile. But really what's relevant to this talk is the fact that it provides a continuous integration server out of the box with cloud-hosted build agents and support for every mobile platform. So whether you're doing native iOS, native Android, cross-platform solutions like Cordova or Xamarin, or React Native, or anything else that I didn't just mention, you have support in VSTS for doing build and test automated based on every check-in. And then also, it has great support for test clouds, right? As I mentioned, this need to scale out your tests, make sure that you're getting the right coverage for the devices that are necessary for you. So that continuous integration element is what we're going to focus on in this talk. And finally, one other product that I just want to mention is a great partner of ours called Perfecto Mobile. And really where they come in is they provide a very rich device lab with thousands and thousands of mobile devices on different connectivity, different device configurations. And so what that's going to let you do is really tap into a plethora of distinct device conditions and phone manufacturers that you can test with confidence that your application is in fact good. And they provide great integration with VSTS so that you can do automated uploads of your builds and run your tests. Okay, so with that, what we're going to now do is showcase how the usage of VSTS for CI and Perfecto Mobile would look if you were implementing that practice into your application.
Hey, so we have a demo project that is both Xamarin and Cordova. The Xamarin app is a patients app that patients would use to schedule doctor's appointments, and then the Cordova app is an app for the doctor to see what his next appointments are, what the patients are looking for. So we're demoing in the first demo the patients app, and we want to automatically compile this app whenever somebody commits new code to our project. So I have my VSTS dashboard here, and you can see we have widgets on the dashboard that shows me the health of my build process. It directly links me to HockeyApp where I can download the app. And I have direct access to my repository where all my code is managed. So everything is under one hood and can be tied together. So here's my repository. You can see all the solution files and all my source code. In the Build tab, we can automatically now build the app using a hosted solution or a local solution. So for our iOS app, we need a Mac to compile, and so we use a Mac in Cloud, Cloud Mac to compile the app. This is my build solution that I have already set up, and it has currently 4 build steps. The first one, version assemblies, really all it does is it goes into my project and automatically increases the version number. So with every new build, I also get a new version number, which is very helpful to later identify which build included which feature and which commit. And then on the Mac, on the remote Mac, we activate the Xamarin license that is needed to compile with Xamarin. We built the solution with this simple task. And as you can see, there's not a lot of steps to configure here except picking the solution and then picking the release configuration that I want to create. Important here is that checkbox create app package that automatically creates an APA file that I can install on my iPhone. And last but not least, we disable the Xamarin license again because it's a cloud Mac, so I can hit a different Mac every time I build my solution. So I need to make sure that I'm not activating licenses all over again and then run out of licenses. So the next thing we want to do here is we want to automatically upload the IPA package that we have created to Perfecto Mobile. To do this, I have to install the Perfecto Mobile extension, which I can get from the Visual Studio Team Services Marketplace. This is a marketplace that we have launched last year that allows both Microsoft developers but also third-party developers to publish their own extensions. So this is a Perfecto Mobile extension. I can simply click on it, click on install, and now install that extension for free into my Visual Studio Team Services account. So with just a few clicks, now I have that new capability in my build process. I go back to my build configuration and can now add a build step for Perfecto Mobile. Here's the Perfecto Mobile build step. I click add. I close this again, and now have that new build step here that I can configure. To connect to Perfecto Mobile, I need to create a connection. And that's a setting in Visual Studio Team Service that lets me set my username and password in a simple and secure way. And once I have done this, I can then simply pick that connection here. And now the build task connects to Perfecto Mobile. I have a native app, so I pick native app here. And I want to upload a back package, and now I have a little cheat sheet. So this is the name of my API file that was created by Xamarin. And it's in this location here. I have to set the bundle ID so they know which package I'm uploading. And then the last thing, you can specify a JSON file that specifies which devices you want to run the app on. So I can, for example, say I only want to deploy this app to a certain device with a certain UDID, a device ID on Perfecto Mobile, which is included in my provisioning profile. So for our test project, I have committed this JSON file to my repository. So I can pick it from the repository here, and I have that PM devices JSON file here. And then I'm done with the build task. I save my configuration, and once it's saved, I queue a new build. And now that build runs automatically in my Mac and Cloud pool, creating a new IPA file and uploading it to Perfecto Mobile. While this is running, I switch over to my Perfecto Mobile tab. So this is Perfecto Mobile in real life. I already have launched an iPhone 6 that runs iOS 8.4, so I can run my app on a device in the browser that I might not have at hand in my office. I can launch multiple devices from a list, so he can see all the devices that are available right now in the pool of Perfecto Mobile devices. And I can also reserve a device for certain time slots. For example, for this session, I have reserved this iPhone 6 here, so it's available for me exclusively during that time. To install an app, I pick this install menu here on the left side, and then I pick my IPA file from my repository. So here's my IPA file that I had uploaded with my build step to Perfecto Mobile. This takes a second, so I've done that before the demonstration. So here's my Patience app, and now in my browser here, I'm doing mouse clicks that are transmitted over the internet to Perfecto Mobile to a real device that is in their device lab. So you can see switching home screens, I do a gesture, and then the device, after a few seconds, does that same action. Let's see. Yeah, so it's a little bit slow due to the Wi-Fi here in the office. So this is my app. It launched on the device. You can see it shows the next pills I have to take as a patient. And then I can, I'm supposed to add a new appointment through this button here, but in the demo, this will crash the app. So if I click here, I create a crash report on this device in the device lab. And the next time I launch the app again, I get asked to submit a crash report. Yeah, so here's the HockeyApp crash reporting, and I can send a report. So even though you had never had access to the device, you are able to collect crashes. Last but not least, you can automate all this into both screen recordings and random testing through the automation tab to fully automate your device testing on multiple devices and hook that back into the Visual Studio process. Back to Jonathan.
Awesome. So that was an illustration of how those concepts of setting up an automated build server, writing automated tests, and then using a device lab to help ensure quality of your development team can be implemented. But as we continue moving along the continuum of product development, right, we probably can all agree that not all issues or product problems can be caught purely by a compile time error or an automated test, right? And even more so, as developers, we tend to maybe have a little bit of confirmation bias when it comes to testing our new features or bug fixes. And so not everything is purely quantitative. And so what's key, right, as we strive to build the highest quality products possible is getting feedback from as many users as we can, as constantly as we can, and really soliciting not just feedback about how do they feel, how do they like the app, is the feature working for them, but also did they run into any issues, right? Because even if we have great device coverage, it's very likely that we're still going to miss some permutation of a device or a device condition like a cell connectivity issue that we didn't catch. And so now as we kind of move forward in the maturity, so to speak, of trying to implement DevOps, we now might say, okay, we've got an automated CI setup going, but really what we need to do beyond that is take those builds that we just saw Thomas generating, right? We're getting an APK every time somebody checks in a line of code, which is awesome. But how do we then start conducting an actual beta program using that so that we can get feedback from our clients, from the QA team, from stakeholders within the company, and make sure that we're getting that honest feedback all the time? Because the last place that you want to get that feedback is in the App Store with a negative review. But even further, right, and as the title of this slide says, how can we go beyond continuous integration to this concept of continuous delivery? Because if we've set up a VSTS automated build that is running our build, generating an APK or an IPA or whatever the application you're building is, why is it that we couldn't just automatically deploy that to our beta testers? Just get it into their hands all the time. So then the process and the continuum becomes even more efficient. That anytime there's a change to the app, it's built and immediately given to our testers. And then finally, how can we make sure that when those testers are running a new version of the app, that we're seeing any crashes that they're encountering, right? Because while feedback is great, we don't want to have to wait for someone to tell us there's an issue if we can just see that the issue happened in the first place, right? That's going to be the most efficient way to catch problems. And so what we're going to discuss now is another product that is part of our mobile DevOps platform called HockeyApp. And many of you may have heard of it. It was featured in the keynote. And HockeyApp is an amazing platform for mobile developers and something that if you haven't heard of it before, I hope you guys take away that this is something you should look into immediately. And then among many things, it provides you effectively your own private app store, right? So maybe you've used Google Play for beta distribution, or maybe you've used TestFlight or another similar product. But what HockeyApp gives you is a cross-platform solution for distributing your beta builds to your own testers privately, right? And that way you don't have to do a platform-specific distribution, whether that be Google Play or some other thing. In addition, it will give you the notification of all of your testers when there's a new build, right? And so that's kind of where, hey, we can start to get that continuum of making sure we have a new build, get it out to testers, get their feedback as possible. But beyond just distribution, HockeyApp also gives you a great crash reporting solution. In fact, it's the best one in the industry. And it works for all mobile app types. It has real-time collection, right? So the moment your testers run your app and have a crash, you're going to know about it. You don't have to wait for them to tell you. And then even better, it's going to pretty print, so to speak, or symbolicate that stack so that it looks like the source code that you wrote, right? So whether you're doing native iOS, native Android, or some cross-platform solution, you're going to see crashes and you're going to see actionable stacks that you can actually do something with. And then finally, HockeyApp provides a great feedback system. So within your app, you can allow your testers to provide you with qualitative feedback about the feature or the bug fix or the experience that you want to get their feedback on. And then as soon as they send that feedback, once again, just like the crash reporting, you'll see that in the portal and you'll be able to respond and take action on that accordingly. So let's go ahead and, as an extension of our previous demo, let's now use HockeyApp to begin getting a continuous beta program going with this app.
Okay, so now I'm still working on the Patients app, and I've now opened my project here in Xamarin Studio, and I want to add the HockeyApp SDK to that solution. HockeyApp comes now since built as a NuGet package, so I can simply go into NuGet. It's a pre-release package, and I can search the package list for the HockeyApp Xamarin package. Yeah, so here's the package. I simply sets checkbox as click add package, and now NuGet does all the magic for me, adding my HockeyApp package to my solution. I need to initialize the SDK in my app delegate class, and to do this, I import the HockeyApp namespace using HockeyApp, and then I find my finished launching method, and I really want to initialize the HockeyApp SDK as the first thing there to catch crashes as early as possible. To do this, I have to copy and paste a little bit of code here that initializes my HockeyApp SDK. And that does a few things. The first thing is I get an instance of the HockeyApp manager, and then I configure this manager with the app ID. And this app ID is a unique GUID that you get from HockeyApp for each of your apps. HockeyApp doesn't use your package name or your bundle identifier to identify the app, but this unique ID. So even if in the future you change your bundle identifier, crashes and other data will still go to the same app. We launched the HockeyApp manager, and then as the last thing, specifically for Xamarin, we also want to catch all exceptions that happen in the mono runtime. So we hook into the unobserved task exception and in the unhandled exception handler to catch those exceptions in addition to native crashes that our iOS SDK handles. Once I've initialized the SDK, that's really all I need to catch crash reports and to collect telemetry from my app. But I want more. I want every time somebody in the app clicks on a tab, I want a custom event. And to do this, I go into my menu model. And here in the onSelected item method, I call a track event method every time somebody taps a tab. And this is really just one line of code that I insert in my code here. So this is our new telemetry manager with the track event method. And whenever somebody clicks a button, then I call a track event with the tab index or the title of the tab and the selected prefix. And again, I need to do using HockeyApp here. And then last but not least, when somebody shakes the phone, I want to collect feedback from that user getting an automated screenshot. And to do this, I go into my base view class here, and I simply implement the onMotion method that gives me a direct shake gesture access. So this really all it does is whenever the controller receives a motion event, I check whether it is a shake gesture, and then I call the feedback manager, and the feedback manager from HockeyApp has his message show feedback compose view with generated screenshot, and that uses iOS APIs under the hood to automatically generate a screenshot and attach that to my feedback thread. And again, I need to include the namespace here. So once I have that and I commit my code to my repository, I want to automatically trigger a build and upload that build to HockeyApp from VSTS. So I go back to my VSTS setup here, into my build definition, and add the HockeyApp task here. So this is the same build definition that we used in the previous demo. Similar to the Perfecto Mobile task, the HockeyApp task comes from an extension that gives you various features. The build task is one of them. And again, I pick my connection from a predefined service connection in settings, so I don't have to handle any API keys or passwords here in my build connections, and they're securely stored. I pick my path here to my API file. And similar to the API file, I also want to upload my symbol files to get the full symbolication of stack traces. So instead of forgetting this upload of the symbol file and then see unsymbolicated stack traces, I automate this whole process. So whenever I create a new code commit, I automatically upload an API file to HockeyApp, and together with this API file comes a dsym file, so all the crashes in the future, even like weeks later, will be fully symbolicated, and I can directly analyze them. So my dsym file has the extension dsym, I paste that here, and then I can decide what happens to that build. So for this specific build, I want to directly publish it to all my testers. I want to notify them all, and I'm good to go. I click Save here, and I queue a new build that is, again, run on my Mac pool. Now switching to my device, so I have a test device here, and that's connected with QuickTime, so you can see on the screen what I'm doing on the device. To get started as a tester, I go to HockeyApp in the browser, and I can install the HockeyApp web clip on the device. To do this, I open this menu here and say re-register device, and I go through a little process that installs a configuration profile on my device that has two benefits. One is it sends back the UDID of the device to HockeyApp, so the developer always knows which devices are available in the tester pool and also can add them to the Apple provisioning portal for provisioning. So install the profile here, and now, as you can see, the browser knows I'm on an iPhone 6 here with iOS 9.2.1, and this is my UDID. I can sign into my HockeyApp account and then directly install the apps that were uploaded by the build server. So this is the Patients app here. I can tap it, and then I can say install to install the app in a similar flow as the App Store does directly on my device. I tap install, I go back to the home screen, and now you can see the installation running on the device. It takes a few seconds to download and install the app, and then I can directly use it. Through our SDK, in addition of crash reporting and feedback, you also get in-app updates. So whenever the app is running and detects that a new update is available on HockeyApp, it will show a notification that allows the tester to always be on the latest build. I launch my app here, and now I shake the phone, and a feedback screen comes up. It has an auto-generated screenshot attached to it. I can tap that screenshot, I can edit the image, and I can use my finger to annotate this screenshot. So I can, for example, say, hey, this is always showing here, and it should finish at some time. But I also can remove the personal data that is shown at the bottom of the screen with this little option here at the top. So I add some noise over this section of the screenshot. So by keeping the context of the screenshot, I'm still confident that nobody gets my personal data. I save the settings, and I say, for example, I love this app, send. And now the screenshot and my text are sent back to HockeyApp. My development team gets a notification that new feedback is available and can directly iterate on my feedback. Back to Jonathan.
So that was pretty awesome, right? So with HockeyApp, now you've moved beyond just doing builds, but you're getting the app into the hands of actual testers that can give you feedback and really make sure that your quality is up to the standard that you want, right? But some of you may be thinking what Thomas just showed was so exciting and so awesome that how do you then go beyond beta and go into production, right? And that's the natural next step. But that may, for some people, be a little scary, right? It's one thing to automate the deployment of an app to beta testers, but to production, that seems a little too cavalier, right? But if we want to move fast, and you want to iterate, and you want to respond quickly, we got to be more efficient than we maybe are having been manually. And so when we think about this concept of continuous delivery, many of us already have release pipelines that we're following when we go into beta or into production. And so if we stop and think about it, we might be able to actually codify and say, hey, what does it look like for us when we manually release a new app version to a public store? And if we define that and make sure we understand all of the steps, then that might start to help make it a little more less scary to think about how we might begin to automate that. But even more so, many people, when we talk about this concept of continuous delivery into production, there's a bit of a hesitation because they don't want to lose the human element. And in fact, I wouldn't even. The products that I work on, I would never want to just release something unless somebody, maybe myself included, had a minute to smoke test, get a feeling for, yep, beyond the test passing and the beta tester saying it's good, I also feel very comfortable with this. And so what we're interested in talking about is how can you set up a deployment mechanism that allows you to release to production without losing the ability to apply the policies and allow stakeholders within your organization to still ensure that they're comfortable with the release. And once you've done that, you can then automate as much of that as possible, if possible, right? And so really, what we haven't shown yet is that VSTS's value extends beyond the things that we've already discussed. And so there's another capability of Visual Studio Team Services called release management. And what release management is it's the big brother, the little brother, whatever, of the continuous integration that says, hey, whenever a build is successfully generated, I'll kick in and I'll take that and deploy it based on the steps necessary for each environment, whether that be beta, which means going off into HockeyApp like we just saw, or whether that means production, and that means going into Google Play or the App Store or the Windows Store, etc. It gives you a full visibility as well into what's the status of every environment. So what build is in beta right now? What build is in production? And then track that back to what commits or what work items were ultimately responsible for triggering that build and then triggering that release. But even more so, you can assign stakeholders to each environment and require them to sign off before it goes on into the next one. So imagine that after the demo that you just saw with Thomas, we said, hey, once everybody in the beta program or our testers have signed off, that triggers an email to maybe our QA lead or someone in the organization, that once they've approved, then and only then does the automation that triggers the deployment into production actually happen. That way we are efficient, we save as much time as possible, but we have not lost that human element that we want to continue maintaining quality. So let's take a look at what this would look like to extend our existing CI system into a production-based CD solution.
Okay, so the first thing I want to show you really is that the builds that we have triggered before are actually green. So they went through, so you can see here, this is the Perfecto Mobile build that we triggered, and this is the HockeyApp build that we triggered. They are green, and they're fully executed. And I can go to HockeyApp and see that same version 1.2.62 on HockeyApp, but even more so, HockeyApp has a backlink to Visual Studio Team Services. You can see here, this is the commit that triggered the build, and this is the build server URL, and I can directly jump from here back to my build definition on VSTS. Now, Jonathan mentioned the release management process, and we're using now the Android app instead of the iOS app as a demo. And the thing that we do differently here for the purpose of the demo is that instead of directly uploading to HockeyApp from my build process, we move that step into the release process. And to do this, we first add a copy and publish artifact step to the build pipeline. And what that build step does is instead of uploading the APK file to HockeyApp or some other service, it stores the artifacts of my build on VSTS so I can reuse those artifacts for different steps later. So I go into the definition here, and I want to copy two things into my artifact store. One is the APK file itself, and the other one is a JSON file that was created through the Google API console that effectively contains credentials that allow me to connect to the Google Play Store to upload my APK. I call that artifact a drop, and it's a server. I want to store it on a server. You can also store it on a file share. And now what happens at the end of the build is that my APK and the JSON file are uploaded to the artifact store so I can use them in release. So I queue another build here. And now in contrast to the iOS build, this Android build runs on the hosted agents that come with VSTS. So effectively, you don't need anything in addition to what you get from VSTS. While this build is running, I switch over to the Release tab, and that looks very similar to the Build tab, except that it allows me to define release environments with an additional approval steps. So here's my release definition, and I create a new environment first. And I call this the Android environment, or the Android release definition. And I want to do two environments. The first one is internal. So this is my internal distribution with HockeyApp. And I simply, similar to the build definition, I can simply add the HockeyApp task here and configure it in the same way that I did for build, but instead of picking the APA file now from my build output, I pick the APA file from the artifact store. So I pick my connection here. It's all similar to before. And now as my build is still running, I cannot pick it here, but once the build is through, I first have to link here to my build definition. So I basically link to my patient's Android definition here. And then I can pick from the drop, but as the drop is not there yet because it's still running, I need to wait until that build is finished. Now I have done that before, so I know what the path will be. So I can simply paste the path here and save that definition. And so similar to build, my build will be uploaded to HockeyApp and all my testers get access to my build. Now once the testers are happy about that build, I also want to deploy that same build to Google Play. And so I add another environment here to my release definition, and I call this external. And there's a third-party task in the marketplace that allows you directly deploy to Google Play. Here's the Google Play task. And so I picked the JSON file. Let's see if that's done. No, it's still not done, so I know the path. This is my credentials JSON file. Similar to the HockeyApp task, I need to specify my APK file. And then Google needs my package name because Google uses the package name to assign that build to the right app in my Google Play setup. And last but not least, I can pick an update message like automatic upload. And I want to publish that build to the Google Play beta channel, so all my beta testers on Google Play get the external build once my internal test flow is ready. So I pick beta here, I save the setup, and now I don't want every developer in my team to be able to publish something to the Google Play Store. So what I can do is I can go into this task definition here and assign an approver to that process. So I can either do pre-deployment approvers or post-deployment approvers. In case of Google Play, I definitely want a pre-deployment approver because once the build is in Google Play, I have no more control from VSTS for it. So I can pick specific users here and then, for example, pick myself as the one that has to approve all the builds that go to Google Play. Once this is all done, I can automatically trigger this to connect that to a build task. So I go into the triggers configuration here and say, I always want to release a build once a build runs through. So I really go from somebody commits code to the Git repository to continuous integration and testing to release. And everything is an automated pipeline, but I have a manual approval step for those steps that are critical to my business. So I pick my artifact source here, and then I can say the internal deployment should always be triggered after a release creation. As the build is still running, I still want to show you the end result. Where is it actually? So in Google Play, then you see here version 60. That's the build I triggered last night. And then this was automatically uploaded from my VSTS setup. And I can then fully release it here in Google Play without ever uploading something manually to Google Play. Back to Jonathan.
Awesome. So hopefully this is starting to really formalize that this desire to iterate quickly without losing quality or control that you or your organization wants is totally possible. And so that's the concept and the philosophy of mobile DevOps that we really want to help enable by means of Visual Studio Team Services and HockeyApp. Now that said, some of you may have seen that last demo and thought, well, I want to do even more. I want to move even quicker, right? Because even if you're automating your app update to the store, that in and of itself introduces some latency depending on the store, right? So we know with the App Store, the Apple App Store, there can be a delay between when you release an update and when it's actually available to your users. Or even with other app stores that don't have as much of a review delay, there's still this non-deterministic amount of time between when you release an update and when you know that your end users have actually installed it. And so how is it, or is it possible for you to have even more tighter engagement with your end users to make sure that when you release an update, they get it? Now, what we're going to talk about now, the last few demos have all been focused on Xamarin. But there's another service that our team has worked on that enables a quality for Cordova and React Native applications that are unique to JavaScript-based mobile platforms and that is the ability to release updates without going through an app store. So you can literally release them directly from the developer to the end user. And this is going to achieve the greatest possible agility, right? As long as you're doing everything else that we just showed, because you definitely don't want to just be releasing stuff that you haven't tested and you haven't gotten any feedback on. So the product that we've worked on is called Code Push. We released this back in October, and it's very simple. It's a cloud-hosted service that we're running in Azure that allows developers to release updates to JavaScript-based applications. And then we have an SDK for Cordova and React Native that allows the application to synchronize updates with the cloud. There's a CLI that's cross-platform that you use to manage, and we have a VSTS extension that allows you to automate that. And so really, if you're developing your apps and you've chosen to go with one of those platforms, either Cordova or React Native, then using Code Push can help you increase the agility that you're having even further in reacting to bugs and new features that you wanted to develop beyond what you could achieve with just going through the store. So let's switch gears, and we'll now look at the Cordova app and see what using Code Push can look like.
Cool. So as I had mentioned, the Cordova app is the Doctors app. So I have installed the Doctors app here on my local iPhone. And imagine I have already submitted this app to the store. And after I submit to the store and I went through the review with Apple, I realized that I forgot something. I forgot to set the title of the app. So my app looks rather blank when looking at the main screen. And my boss and my stakeholders are saying, hey, we need to fix this. And I tell them, you know, it takes 7 days until Apple has done another review of that app. So luckily, though, I had integrated Code Push into my app. So I can simply push a new package, and I'll show you in a second how that works, to the App Store, to Code Push, and update my app without resubmitting to Apple. So I go into the side menu here. I have that little check for updates button here. And when I tap this, I get an error. Damn it. Fail. OK. I show you how it works, and then we figure it out, hopefully.
Reset the simulator. Maybe it's a network issue if you reset the simulator, but.
Yeah. So to integrate into Code Push into my app, I click on the Doctors app here in HockeyApp. And since yesterday, we have full Code Push integration with HockeyApp. So you can directly sign up for Code Push from the HockeyApp UI. HockeyApp automatically detects that your app is a Cordova app and then shows this new item here in the HockeyApp UI that lets you connect to Code Push. I click this, and then all I really have to do is click Link App, and that connects my Code Push app with the Code Push service, my Cordova app with the Code Push service. So I'm now able to use my HockeyApp API key and my HockeyApp app ID directly with Code Push, and I get the direct steps shown in the HockeyApp UI. So I really only all I have to do is to copy those steps into my console and into my code to get access to Code Push. So I don't want to do the npm install. I already have done this, but I want to log into the Code Push service with my API key. I do this. I'm now logged into Code Push, and then I want to add the Code Push plugin to my demo app. I do this. And then I get shown the code that I have to add to my app. So I have to add this line to my config XML file. And then here on the console, it also showed me a line that I have to add to the config file. So I take this line first here. And here's my config XML for Cordova. I add this one line that I got from the installation process, and then I add this line that has my app ID in it, so I don't have to find it anywhere, to my code. And that's really all I have to do for the basic integration of Code Push. Now I want to fix my bug, so I go over here into the HTML file where I forgot the title, and I added my title here, and it's Health Clinic. And then as the last thing, I push that Cordova package to Code Push. So we're using TypeScript, so I'm running gulp to compile my Cordova app, and now I'm simply doing this command here that I copied over from HockeyApp, and it's pushing my Cordova package over to Code Push, and it gives access to testers. Now let's see if that works, and otherwise we switch to the fallback phone. So. Yeah, So here's my update available. I want to install it, yes. Now it downloads my Cordova package from CodePush, it installs the update, and voila, I have my title without resubmitting to Apple.
Awesome. So there's not really any way that you could be more agile than what Thomas just showed there, right? If, in fact, you're using Cordova or React Native. But there's really one final missing piece of this whole workflow that we need to discuss. That is the notion of tracking how are your users actually using your application, right? So it would be one thing if we just started being more agile, automating our builds, automating our tests, releasing to beta testers, releasing to the store, totally circumventing the store. But we want to make sure that from a business perspective, the energy and the investments that we're making are actually being valuable, right? And so this is where now we want to extend the DevOps conversation to this notion of monitoring, right? In that every time that we do a release, we ship a feature, we fix a bug, beyond the quantitative and qualitative feedback of is it any good, we want to know in practice, are people actually using it? Or beyond if they're using it, what are they doing that might help inform things that we spend more time in, right? And so really, now that we're talking about this notion of analytics and metrics and so forth, first and foremost, it's critical that when you're implementing this kind of DevOps practice, that you understand on a daily and monthly basis how many users are you acquiring and retaining, right? Because from a business perspective, that's critical to know how successful is your app doing. You could rely on certain metrics that you get with app stores, but really, this DevOps culture, right, is trying to bring all of these aspects of operating an application as closely together as possible. And one of those things is knowing how the application is succeeding from a business perspective. Now, beyond just knowing how many users are using the application on a daily and monthly basis, it's also very key to know what are users actually doing. And as I mentioned, the reason that that's important is that you can move agile all day long, but at the end of the day, we only have a finite number of hours in the day. And so being able to prioritize the features and the investments that we make as a development team based on data that we can see how our users are interacting with the application, where they're spending their time, if they're spending time on things, is going to enable us to actually make those kind of decisions to then help inform the features that we do, which will get checked in and then get built and so forth and so on. So HockeyApp, we didn't show this before, has a great solution for both getting the DAU/MAU metrics of your application as well as tracking custom events. So let's now look at the last demo and see how it looks like to instrument our application to begin getting business insights as well.
So here I'm back on my HockeyApp dashboard, and I see all my apps, those that I'm testing and those that I'm developing. And I want to check the usage statistics of my health app, the patients app that we had shown earlier. So I can simply click on it, and I get to my app dashboard, and it shows me all the data on a single page that is interesting for me. So I can see I had 43 crashes in the last few days. I had 38 downloads, 11 users were using my app, and then I had 119 sessions. I can simply click on one of these boxes to get a 30-day chart and also see how many unique users I had versus how many unique new users I had per day. And I can hover over those charts to see the detailed numbers. And this is the app that we were demoing on the booth. So every day, the team, the HockeyApp crew was using the app to demo it to attendees. New at Build is that we have this new events tab here that shows me custom events for my app. And this is the custom event I had added earlier to my menu to see how many users have clicked on which tab. So you can see here at the booth, apparently the settings tab was very popular and had the most usage. And I can see how this usage declined over the last 3 days, how many unique users I had, and how many, what the percentage was of those users across all the events. Again, I can click on those boxes to see the details for that specific section of my app. Of course, I can also see crash reports. So here are all my crash reports loading. And you can we specifically uploaded a few versions where we didn't upload the symbols. So for example, the first row here, this one, you can see, you don't see the method name and line numbers here. You only see cryptic memory addresses. So that tells you need to upload the symbols so we can actually symbolicate the crash and show you much better information like this example here and here, where you can see the method name and class name. I can also view my feedback in the feedback tab, and I see all the feedback that I had submitted. So here's my feedback that I had submitted earlier in the session. I see my message, and I also see what device I was using during submitting the feedback. So that was an iPhone 6 with iOS 9.2.1, and I was running version 1.2.39 on that device. I can click on the screenshot, and as you remembered, I had filtered out the personal data, so no more personal data visible to the developer. But to really close the loop, I want to now follow up through a work item in VSTS and develop new code to fix that feedback issue here. Now, the cool thing is we have connected this app on HockeyApp with VSTS. So what actually has happened is that HockeyApp already has created a ticket in my VSTS. So you can see the yellow tracked here. And if I click on that tracked item here, I directly jump into that same work item in VSTS, closing the mobile DevOps loop between a code commit, a build process, a release process, and that telemetry crash and feedback process. Thank you.
So that was a lot. It was a lot of stuff, and we only really kind of just showed the surface of many of these features. But hopefully, these demos in this talk has helped to illustrate how it is that mobile DevOps can help you and your organizations actually achieve the goal of moving quicker without losing quality, right? And so when we look at the diagram on to the right, we can see that what we did was, as Thomas was saying, we connected the loop between the developer and the end user. We use Visual Studio Team Services to automate our build and Perfecto Mobile to run our automated tests, right? That was the beginning of helping us make sure that we were continuously in a state of being releasable. We then used HockeyApp to distribute the app to testers, gather feedback, gather crash reporting. We saw Code Push, how that was useful to distribute apps directly without going to the store. And that is really what enabled us to have that nice continuous solution. And then the monitoring capabilities and the business insights is what helps us inform the next set of work that we just keep doing, and then you just rinse and repeat that. So hopefully this was interesting to you guys. This was valuable. And if so, what we really would like to encourage you to do is to check out each of these products. Many of them are individually useful, but the integration of them is also very, very strong, right? And so if HockeyApp beta distribution is valuable to you, if you haven't seen it before, please go out and check it out. Visual Studio Team Services, Code Push, Perfecto Mobile, etc. In addition, there was a great hands-on lab that we've been running at the event called Mobile DevOps. That's 3 hours long and goes over all of the things that we just covered in depth. If you didn't get a chance to go to it, or you won't have the chance to go to it, if you visit this link, you can actually run through the lab at your own time. And then finally, we would love to hear your individual story as a developer, how it is maybe you're implementing mobile DevOps practices in your organization today, how it is that you would like to do it, and what challenges you have. So there's a booth in the hub area that's called Share Your Story. And if you go there and you would spend a few minutes with us, you'll get some challenge points as an incentive, but it would also be extremely useful for our team to understand your individual needs. So with that, we really appreciate you guys coming and spending this hour with us, and we hope you have a great rest of the conference. Please fill out the evaluation and let us know how we did. Yeah, if you have any questions, please come up, and we'd love to chat.
We do the flash voting, right? So.